Hello and welcome back to another episode of A Weekly Waypoint. Today, as promised, we are playing Tony Hawk's Underground 2. And you might be thinking, Christian, don't be an idiot. This is obviously Tony Hawk's Underground 1 as evidenced by the New Jersey level. But no, we are playing a mod for Tony Hawk's Underground 2 called Tony Hawk's Underground Pro, I think. Fug Pro. It's called Fug Pro. Funnily enough, it has featured on A Weekly Waypoint before, but that was hundreds of episodes ago, back before anyone watched the thing. If you didn't tune in last week, basically I thought I could enter cheat codes to unlock all the levels in Tony Hawk's Underground like I've been doing with the Pro Skater games, and no, you can't. So I didn't know how to fix that problem, and then this week I remembered that Fug Pro exists. Hooray. For those of you not in the know, Fug Pro is a mod for Tony Hawk's Underground 2, which basically adds a ton of stuff to the game from previous entries in the series, including most levels, most unlockable secret skaters, all that stuff. It doesn't just stop at Tony Hawk's Underground 2, it also includes levels for American Wasteland and Project 8. It's crazy. It's a really good mod, and there should be simple instructions on how to install it if you own the game online. You can go find them online fairly easily enough. If I remember, I will link in the spreadsheet to where it is, but it's not that difficult. You basically just need the game installed on your computer, and then you download the mod and it's got an installer, and you point it at the game and it installs. One thing though, if it asks you if it wants to make a desktop shortcut, say yes, because I literally couldn't find where it installed itself afterwards, and it took an extra half an hour of stress to figure that out, so that was fun. It was hiding in app data. What the hell installs itself in app data? Now, I don't know if Tony Hawk's Underground is a game that introduces the ability to switch up your tricks while you're grinding on rails and manualing in order to boost your combo points to something insane, but it's the earliest game I ever remember doing it in, which is why I kind of forgot to bother trying in the previous games, but we're just going to assume that Underground is where that was introduced. So when you see me grinding on rails and manualing in this game, you will see me shaking around on the board like I'm doing now. It just means that I'm doing extra tricks to get extra combo points. The problem is, it basically also means I'm spamming square and circle, or X and whatever's on the Xbox controller. X and B. I've only owned an Xbox for 5 years, it's fine. And my downfall in doing that is it usually means that I'm still doing that as I jump off the rail, which means I'm asking my character to do 1,000 kickflips, and I do that. That's going to happen a lot. But overall, it does mean that I just end up getting much better high score. Well, okay, slightly better high scores than in previous videos. Tony Hawk's Underground was the first Tony Hawk's game I ever had and played, and for those of you who own it, you will know that yes, it has a big old story mode, which is why most of the levels in this game are based on real locations, as opposed to the previous game, where they started to get a little bit wackier with it, or instead of being like, oh, we'll go to this city, they're like, alright, let's do an airport level, you know? And I must admit, I do kind of prefer that old way of doing things, and as far as I remember, Underground 2 does kind of go back and start adding wackier levels to the late game as well. But yeah, for anyone who's played the story mode of this game, we have solidarity in hating Eric Sparrow. It's just a well-known fact that Eric Sparrow is the biggest piece of shit to ever live. You can actually choose to skate as him in this game, and I decided not to do that. We're Iron Man. I decided to go with game-accurate secret character, because I could have gone for Doom Guy, but I don't think you could play as Doom Guy in Underground 1. Maybe next week. One last thing about the mod before you do go off downloading, just be aware that it doesn't have every level. It has every Underground 1 level, it has every American Wasteland level, I think it has every Pro Skater 1 level, but it's a little bit spotty on Pro Skater 2 levels, on Project 8 levels, all that stuff. I think the mod is still in development, because I'm pretty sure last time I installed it, it had less levels than it does now, but yeah, it's well worth it. If you enjoy Tony Hawk's games, yeah, this is well worth your installation. It's basically, when it comes to the older games, it's basically a fan remake of the older levels in the Underground game. It's great. It's so well made that it's hard to believe that it's not officially done. Also, when looking this up, I did discover that Tony Hawk's Underground 1 did have 3 levels from, I think it was Pro Skater 2 remade for the game. I assume that Fug Pro pulls those versions of the levels for this mod just to save time. But then, I don't know, I'm assuming that they were able to do that for the Underground levels because it's basically made in the same kind of game, but you know, maybe it's not as easy to do that on a back end as I thought, and that these levels are also made from the ground up. I don't know. If you would like to see me go through these Fug Pro levels levels in the weekly waypoint, let me know. It won't be as simple as just doing all of Pro Skater 1 and all of Pro Skater 2 like we've been doing for the actual games themselves, because as I mentioned, Pro Skater 2 has like 4 levels, and it would be a very short weekly waypoint if we did it that way. But it could still be fun to explore. But enough about skateboarding in imaginary worlds. What else have I been doing in imaginary worlds this week? I don't know why I posed that question like... like TikTok clickbait, I'm sorry. I think being a YouTuber for this long is getting to me. Oh no, I've been corrupted. People ask me how my day was at work. I'm like, you won't believe what happened to me in work tonight. I've just been playing a shit ton of World of Warcraft. Classic anniversary. I need to start calling it classic anniversary for everyone's sanity, because that's what it is. Even though I don't know what they want to be calling it. I still think it's weird how they're doing it. We've talked about this in previous weeks. I've been playing vanilla. I've been playing World of Warcraft vanilla, the classic 2, whatever the hell you want to call it. As you can see by yesterday's video, I rolled a troll mage, and I've just happily been questing my way through Durotar. I already talked about this last week as well, didn't I? Because I told you I was just listening to audiobooks while I was doing it, and that is what I've continued to do this week. Whereas I was just starting out last week though, today I can tell you that I have hit level 20. I've hit 24 hours played over the past week, which isn't the most amount of time you can sink into a game over a week, but it's a significant amount of time, I think, for someone who also has a job. And I find that whenever I'm playing vanilla, at around level 20 is usually when I fall off. It's usually my jumping off point, because the XP is getting really slow, the difficulty is getting really hard, and I just get frustrated. Now, I thought I was protected from this a little bit, based on the fact that I wasn't really giving the game my full concentration, if you know what I mean. I was just doing it in the background while I was listening to an audiobook, and therefore the grindy nature of the leveling didn't wear down on me as much, because I wanted it to be grindy and repetitive. However, the difficulty portion is definitely getting to me. I've been getting quests which I just cannot do by myself, even though they're supposed to be soloable, because the objectives are set really far into the back of caves which have insane respawn rates, and enemies stood next to each other, so that when you pull one, you pull multiple. And as anyone who's played vanilla knows, if you pull more than one enemy, you're probably dead. If you pull more than 2 enemies, you are definitely dead. So I guess what I'm getting at here is, it's okay for me to throw myself into a grind while I'm listening to an audiobook. That kind of protects me from the nature of the repetitive grind wearing my interest in the game down, but it's not really protecting me from the frustration of having quests which constantly challenge me and make me die. But you know, I know people do level to 60 solo in classic vanilla, so maybe I'll continue trying. Maybe I've just hit like a sore spot in the Barrens. Maybe what I need to do is start leveling some slightly lower level quests in Silverpine Forest, and therefore it will take a little bit longer, but it'll be a little bit easier. I'm not giving up on Kazar the Troll Mage just yet, but I won't lie, I've got the itchy feet. I do want to make an undead character of some description on that server, or maybe just get back into Cataclysm Classic, I'm not sure yet. I originally mentioned during Doric's quest, of which there was not an episode this week because it was a busy week, my apologies. I mentioned in that series that I wanted to have a character at max level ready for when Mists of Pandaria comes out. Realistically, Mists of Pandaria is probably going to be coming out in like 2 months, and yeah, on our schedule there's no way that we're getting or at least we're not getting Doric to max level in that time. I don't know, I could always change my audiobook listening efforts over to Cataclysm and just level a character over there. Maybe that's what I'll do. Actually, as I say that sentence out loud, I think that's exactly what I will do. Am I going to make a Night Elf Druid again? God damn it, I'm going to make a Night Elf Druid again, aren't I? Time is a flat circle. If I know anything about WoW, for the next 6 years it's going to become my main game again now. No, it's not. It's not. You can only do something once in that capacity. But yeah, I'll still do Doric's quest. It just won't be with the intention of getting to max level before Mists, because that's definitely not happening on that schedule. But yeah, my itchy feet syndrome isn't just related to should I make a new World of Warcraft character or should I play a different version of World of Warcraft. It's also related to, I don't know, should I pop back into Star Wars The Old Republic or Rift or something and try and make some kind of long-form content in one of those games? Or even just play them and listen to an audiobook as I've been doing now? That would be a terrible idea for The Old Republic, because that's a very narrative-based game, but I don't know, I could still do it between narrative portions. Like, I could pause my audiobook, and then I have found the questing side of that game to be a little repetitive and grindy, so I could listen to a book while I'm playing that. I don't know, there are so many options available to me as someone with free will. Rift might be a bad idea to listen to while playing an audio... Wait, hang on. It might be a bad idea to play while listening to an audiobook just because it's a new experience, and I'll probably have a little bit more of my brain dedicated to the game, and I might miss some things in the book. I don't know. I did also re-download Forza Motorsport because that's also an excellent game to play while just listening to a podcast or a book. Yesterday I spent a decent amount of time just doing some of those events where it's like 35 laps, and you're just doing it for like 2 hours or whatever, but I was listening to Hero of Ages the whole time, and it was a good time. It's interesting though, I would not recommend playing multiplayer while listening to an audiobook. It's the same as like when I'm playing WoW, and like any time I have to group up with another person for a quest, I immediately pause my audiobook because I just will not be focusing on my audiobook until I have left the party. Even if we don't say a word, even if we're still just automatically questing, both with the understanding of like we're clearly partied up for this quest, we don't need to say anything because we don't need to kind of interact to do this. I still can't concentrate on the audiobook if there's another person in my virtual space, if you know what I mean. It's weird how the brain does that. But yeah, in terms of the actual books I've been listening to, I've been steamrolling through the Mistborn trilogy. Last night I actually spent a decent amount of time kind of planning out what I'm going to be reading next from Brandon Sanderson in the Cosmere. I have this great big spreadsheet of it's a TBR. I know some people are like, oh no, don't spreadsheet your TBRs because that just turns it into a chore. It's more of like a list of books I'm really excited to read. It makes my brain go wiggly in the best way. And I spent some time looking up various reading guides for the Cosmere, and there was like publication order and semi-publication order, but kind of like with some tweaks to make it flow better. And then there's like, timeline order and all of this shit. And I'm looking at all of them and I'm like, none of these work for me. So what I did is I spent like an hour researching different reading lists and reorganizing mine into a format which works for me. And it's not even one that I'm necessarily going to force myself to stick to. I've basically just made it so that at the top of the list are his 2 earliest standalone novels, Elantris and Warbreaker, and also the Elantris short stories and novellas and stuff. And then it's all of Mistborn. And then it's the rest of the Arcanum Unbounded miscellany, and then it's the Stormlight Archive and the in-between novellas and stuff, and then it's the secret projects at the bottom. From what I can understand, it mostly makes sense in terms of reading order, and like he constantly says you can kind of read them in any order, at least if you're respecting the series orders. But there is an order in which you will go, oh wow, this is this connection to the Cosmere that I only noticed because I read this other book, and I want to be one of those people. My main thing is, because I'm about to finish the Hero of Ages, probably today. As soon as I set this video to rendering, I'm going to start listening to it. There's 4 hours left in the book. But then what I've really been wanting to do is read Mistborn's Secret History, because it very much continues on from the events of Era 1, but it contains spoilers for the 3rd book of Era 2. There's a lot of discourse online, shocker, about when you should read Secret History, because Brandon Sanderson himself in the blurb says, oh, it's very minor spoilers for book 6, or book 3 of Era 2. So I was planning on reading it after book 3, but then I've seen so many people online be like, oh no, it's massive spoilers, and I'm like, but if the author says it's very minor spoilers, what the hell are we doing here? I know how the internet can get about protecting spoilers. I play Final Fantasy XIV online, it's fine. And I don't want to make myself read 3 almost entirely unrelated books before getting to the one I'm the most interested in, just because it's going to reveal the property of a metal that I have yet to discover within the book itself. If it's just something like that, then that's fine, because I'm just learning it earlier. It's probably fine. If it's like a character death, then yeah, maybe not, but I don't know. The problem is, now that I've outlined it that way, you cannot tell me in the comments whether I should or should not read it, so stump. But yeah, I think I'm just going to read Secret History after book 3, and it's probably going to be fine. I'm usually pretty adamant about avoiding spoilers, but when it comes from within the author's own text from another source, it's probably fine. If it's a spoiler I can control seeing, then yeah, it's fine. Anyway, let's now switch to talking about something else, like upcoming games and stuff. That might be the least adept transition I've ever done in my life. So I haven't been in the Elder Scrolls neighborhood for a little while. I have booted up the game again a little recently, but it was only to continue doing older content. I haven't done the Gold Road content yet, and I think that was like a 2023 expansion, so I'm falling behind a little bit. The last I heard from the Elder Scrolls Online, they were talking about the idea of doing away with their year-long content plans and spending time working on systems in the game like fixing Cyrodiil, like their PvP zone and all that stuff. So imagine my surprise when I see advertised to me the Elder Scrolls Online 2025 content pass promising 4 major updates throughout the year. Sorry, I just inhaled a bit of my fringe when I said that. That might have sounded weird. Your boy needs a haircut. But yeah, for those of you unaware, the previous content model for the Elder Scrolls Online was they would do a chapter every year, or they would do a year of content, and it would be a big old zone DLC, 2 dungeon DLCs, and a smaller zone DLC wrapping up the story. That is exactly what the 2025 content pass is. At least that's how it seems while looking at the store page and stuff. I didn't actually watch like the deep dives or whatever. But the weird thing about this is you have to buy it all bundled in one, whereas before you did not. You could just buy the dungeon DLC or the zone DLC. But ESO Plus subscribers get the dungeon DLC for free, and if I remember right, the second zone DLC as well, which means that even ESO Plus subscribers are being forced to pay for the content now. The bundle is £45, which is around £10 more than a standard kind of like zone DLC drop. And while the premise, which I'll get to in a second, is interesting, it's also devoid of any new features. Like every expansion so far has come with either a new class or a new feature to the game, like a new skill line, like whatever they call archaeology or Tales of Tribute, their card game, stuff like that. But this is just like, alright, new zone, new story, that's it. And I'm a little bit confused as to why they've done this big 180, and, you know, I mean, I'll admit, I was a little concerned when they said they were stepping away from the content model that they had previously to focus on features and stuff, but the way they're marketing it is, I think, the weirdest thing to me, because they're marketing it like this brand new thing. We're doing seasons now. You can get Season 1, which is going to be the Zone DLC, and Season 2, which is going to be the second Zone DLC, and there will also be 2 dungeons. And I'm like, that's just what you were doing before, but now you're calling it a season, and you're charging more for it, and there's less to it. I don't understand, Zos. Please help me understand. Also, usually with the old model, they would have like a Elder Scrolls Online collection bundle, which would include all the previous DLC up to that point, or all the previous major expansion DLC anyway. Doesn't look like they're doing that anymore, which means that this was a really bad time to be behind on the story for the first time. However, the actual direction that they're taking it in is interesting because it is a direct sequel to the vanilla main story, which is interesting to me because for a long time I've been kind of criticizing the game for having such an individualistic approach to their expansions, by which I mean every expansion for the most part is a self-contained story, which is kind of cool until you start to think about how that means that there's no real progression to the story or the world in any meaningful, lingering way like there is in other MMOs. It's basically the exact opposite of Final Fantasy XIV in that instead of having this sequential story where every expansion moves the story forward, you have every expansion just be like, okay, now let's go explore this part of the world where they've got this going on. And in the lore, that makes it really weird as well, because everything apparently happens in the same year of time, which means there is just 1 year on Tamriel which is really eventful and dramatic. But then they also started trying to incorporate elements of like, oh, okay, we're kind of moving the story forward, because in the High Isle expansion, while we're focusing on High Isle and what's going on there, we're kind of talking about a peace treaty being enacted for the Free Banners War, and then we're not going to talk about that anymore because we can't actually, you know, continue that storyline without affecting the world. But this is a direct sequel to the vanilla storyline, which is exciting to me because I've done that a few times, and I'm excited to see, you know, the world evolve and stuff, and I don't know how well they're gonna actually deliver on that front, but I do want to check this out at some point, but I just don't love the model that they're choosing for it. It's also very clear that they're running out of world, they're running out of new places to send us to, because this is now the second time that they've invented a brand new location, which isn't a bad thing, it's cool, but, you know, how many times can you do that before it starts to feel like, is this really canon? But we're going to the island of Solstice, not Solstheim. I've never said that out loud. Solstheim, you know, the DLC from Skyrim. No, we're going to the island of Solstice, And it does look like from the trailer that there will also be a bunch of quests taking place in the old world, which is good, and I want to see that happen. Hopefully they deliver on that in a meaningful way and it's not just like the prequel quest or something. But yeah, I'm probably not going to dip back in when it comes out or anything, but I'm excited to check it out when I do start catching up with the game. The price point. Why is everything costing more nowadays? I mean, you know, technically it costs less if you're the kind of person who never got ESO Plus and liked to buy the DLC as it came out individualistically. It's actually a good deal for you. But that's also just like a less efficient way of getting the DLC monetarily, and the fact that we have to do this now is just annoying. But yeah, I won't lie, the knowledge that I still need to buy Gold Road separately, and I don't have to play for it or anything, I don't even have to buy it, but you know, I won't have access to some of the new features that came with it. That does put me off of getting back into ESO before this comes out or afterwards. And as I've said last week and in other previous weekly waypoints, typically when I resub or reinstall an MMO at the minute, it's not because I'm interested in the new stuff that they're doing, it's because I just want to do the old cozy stuff I've done 1,000 times before. I guess that's just a point I've reached in my life. But anyway, we're approaching the end of this video, and I will leave you with the knowledge that 2 weeks from now, we will be uploading an episode on exactly the 7-year anniversary of the weekly waypoint. That's pretty cool. I kind of have a loose plan for what I'm doing for it, but it might not work out, so maybe, we'll see. It's kind of in line with what we're doing now, but not quite. It's also something that might tank on the algorithm in terms of views, because I love self-sabotage. I will leave you to speculate wildly on that may be. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you in whatever I make next.